10th, 2026. If you are able, please join us in saluting the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, members of the audience, can you please remain standing for a moment of silence for an educator, Dottie Elijah, passed away recently, and may she rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Woburn. And will the superintendent, secretary to the school committee, please call the roll?
Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Crowley.
Present.
Mr. Morenin.
Present.
Ms. Nagel.
Present.
Mr. Oliveira. Present. Ms. Wetzel.
Present.
Ms. Cormier.
Present. Thank you. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed by Woburn Public Media Center, and by speaking, you are consenting to being recorded. Please silence all phones and other devices. First on the agenda is consent agenda. Do I have any action? It does seem like it's out of order.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Should we take out anything from the consent agenda?
Oh, yeah. Madam Chair, before we vote, I'd like to extract the DECA field trip from the consent agenda, as it was discovered that this is in fact not a field trip that requires school committee approval.
Okay. So we will extract the DECA field trip request. We have discussed that with the administration. That is not something under the school committee purview, so that will not require a vote this evening. But we will move forward with voting on the approval of the January 13th and January 28th, 2026 school committee minutes. Any more discussion on the consent agenda? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You guys have it.
And Madam Chair, I just want to clarify that DECA can certainly still go on their
Oh,
trip, and we're not
yes.
saying no. We're just, the superintendent is actually in charge of approving this.
Yes, that is not up to us.
Yeah.
Because it's a competition.
It's a competition, which is okay.
All right. Public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come before the committee to speak? Please do so now. Please state your name and address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes to address the committee. And please refrain on any attacks on the Woburn Public Schools employees.
I promise that I will.
I know.
I just request we deduct any coughing time.
Noted.
All right. So, good evening, Christy Nickerson, President of the Woburn Teachers Association. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the school committee. On behalf of the Woburn Teachers Association, I want to speak about something that may look simple on paper, but feels deeply personal in real life: the school calendar. Over the past several months, the WTA held listening sessions and a public community forum, and we are deeply grateful for the parents and caregivers and the community members who took the time to share their experiences with us. One message came through clearly and powerfully: the school calendar shapes daily life for students and families in ways that matter far beyond a schedule. Educators spoke about lost instructional time, disrupted routines, and the challenge of meeting student needs, especially for children who depend on school for consistency, services, and connection. Families spoke about early release days that create real hardships, including missed work, difficult childcare choices, and students who struggle when their routines are repeatedly broken. What moved us the most is that these concerns weren't separate, they overlapped. The voices of educators and families were saying the same thing: how we design our school calendar directly affects student learning and student well-being and family stability. As we look ahead, the WTA hopes to work collaboratively with this committee, with district leadership, and with families to thoughtfully re-examine our school calendar development so it better supports learning, honors family realities, and gives every child in Woburn the consistency they deserve. We believe that when we truly listen to all stakeholders and place students at the center of our decisions, our calendar can become not just a schedule, but a promise to our families and educators that their time, their challenges, and their children truly matter.
2 minutes. Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Welcome, Ms. Kuberry.
Hi, everyone. Rachel Kuberry at 6 Blake Street. I want to start off by offering some gratitude to my principal, Maloney, the DPW, Jeff Dillon, and the folks at the club for working to ensure that the Harold Wyman kids had safe route to the Boys and Girls Club after school after the recent snowstorms. Every other elementary school is provided with free, safe access via a bus, so the Harold Wyman needs that safe access too. Thank you also to Principal Maloney for working with Central Office to add a bus stop on Mondays to provide bus access to youth band for the Harold Wyman students. It seems that this service has been provided to the Linscott already, so I'm grateful that it's extended to the Harold Wyman too. And on to areas of growth. I hope that as we embark on conversations about our transportation policy in which students can access the bus, I will hear conversations about equitable access. I heard a commitment to this from the committee last spring. I recognize too that the spring and then the summer was too late to make busing decisions that impacted families. But the school year is ticking away, so I urge you to open those conversations again in anticipation that we can reduce some stops and decrease our busing budget. In discussing busing, I hope that this conversation can extend to school-sponsored activities like youth band so that we can provide equitable access to all students. I don't think we can talk about our transportation policy without revisiting our wellness policy and our commitment to safe routes to school. Despite this policy being adopted in 2024, I've not heard any updates regarding establishing and promoting safe and preferred walking and biking routes to school. Not only do we need to identify these safe routes to school to be in alignment with our own policy, but identification of these routes can help DPW clear the priority safe routes to school after snowstorms. After the last 2 snowstorms, my children could not navigate the sidewalks to get home without walking on Main Street. It took much advocacy on my part to get the sidewalks cleared. If the district provided me with identified safe routes to school that were clear of snow, we would use those. And prioritizing routes would likely mean that these priority routes would get cleared before school opened after a snowstorm because there would be fewer routes to clear. DPW has done a fantastic job clearing the sidewalks, but if they're not provided with direction regarding priority routes, then they're left to guess and do their best. And lastly, a comment on open meeting law, public meetings, and your own protocols. This is what the community and the school committee commonly calls a public meeting. This right here. So unfortunately, your policy or your protocol states that our meetings are held in public but are not public meetings. While I get the intent behind those words, I disagree with the words that you chose and you all signed your name to. This is what we call a public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kuberry. Anybody else that would like to speak to the committee this evening? Ms. Friedman, come on up.
Good evening, Bernice Friedman, 56 Leonard Street. I just wanted to encourage the school committee and the administration to take a serious look at the district-wide crisis communications plan for the Woburn Public Schools. And this is in the wake of the recent incident at the high school where students were evacuated and there seems to be multiple sources of information. I know that as a Shamrock school parent, I also got a separate remind message from my own principal. And, other schools, like, for example, at Malcolm White, the principal, to my knowledge, also sent out a message separate to their student population. And so I'm just wondering if you could please take a look at the district-wide communications plan so there is a unified source of information with updates as the facts change during a crisis, and just one source of information, not multiple sources of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. Anybody else? Looks like Ms. Tisdale's making her way to us. Come on up.
I know.
I didn't know it was supposed to actually snow. Hi, I'm Alex Tisdale, 5 Majority Lane. I'm the Vice President of the Woburn CPAC. So first, I want to speak on behalf of the CPAC tonight. We'd like to again thank the school committee and WPS administration for their recent partnership. This relationship has included welcoming our CPAC president, Adam Chapman, to provide updates on our latest events and providing assistance on sessions on special education programs, and hosting Ms. Sarah Ward, who presented on executive function. Second, we'd like to congratulate the district on the recently announced grant award of $50,000 for exploring alternatives to timeout rooms. This program from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education supports districts to examine the use of and potentially phase out so-called timeout rooms as a means to deal with students during periods when they become dysregulated. We are incredibly supportive of these efforts as a CPAC, and we'd like to explore this program further in partnership with the Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee. This topic has been previously surfaced by our membership, in particular with regards to RISE program students. We would love to understand the intended scope of the Woburn program and where we can support. As with other Woburn programs, we offer our assistance in communicating out this program to the Woburn community. Again, congratulations on this fantastic award. We're open to discussing further with the school committee and WPS administration, and we look forward to continuing this discussion with the members of SSA. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Tisdale. Anybody else that would like to speak to the school committee this evening? Going once. Appears that is all. We'll move on to the city council liaison to the school committee, Mr. Amara. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good to see most of you all again. Don't have much tonight, but on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to thank all the members that did show up last night to the committee meeting for the Alta Vesta. And, you know, as always, please reach out to me if I can be of any assistance and help. I want to wish you guys all a great school vacation week next week. And I know my mother's looking forward to it. But, yeah, if, like I said, anyone has any questions for me, please feel free to reach out. And hope you guys all drive safe tonight. Get home safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does not appear to have a student representative this evening, so we will move on to the reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff.
Sure. So first is our ML coordinator, Rania Caldwell. And so Rania's been with us for a few years and annually does an update to the committee on where we are with our ML population. And so we're fortunate to have Rania in district and here tonight. So without further ado.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Congratulations to the new committee members who are here. See a couple new faces. Just want to pop in, provide a quick ML update with some sort of highlights that have happened in the recent months. So if you can flip to the next slide, just want to anchor ourselves in our current multilingual learner data. So you'll see our current English learners listed by level, as well as our former English learners, which are students who were English learners and exited within the past 4 years. And those two numbers are included because it's important to note that both of those numbers fall into our ML-EL subgroup and accountability data, and also are included in the high needs data as well. So they're both combined in that data. So it's important to see that. And then we have our staffing. We have 14 ML teachers at the elementary level and 8 at the secondary. And then we're fortunate to have added 2 ML coaches last year who have been a tremendous asset. And we'll highlight them a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest things that we've undertaken since last year was the review and purchase of an ESL high-quality instructional material resource. Last year, we updated the committee as part of that process, and we received about $267,000 in grant funds from the Department of Education to purchase those resources. So as you can see in the photos, we had a lot of boxes come in the spring. They're neatly organized in those pictures. That's not what they look like for much of the spring. But we were able to purchase about $250,000 worth of supplies that included textbooks and any student-facing books, as well as licenses, and those licenses last for students for 6 years. So it really is a longer-term investment for some of those resources, and we purchased as much as we could. So there are stacks of boxes still in my office because we know that books are going to rip and tear over time, so we wanted to buy as much as we could and spend every dollar
of those grant funds that we could. We also purchased, in the smaller picture, a lot of implementation supplies for educators, because we know resources are great, but we also want them to have, if we have the money, the bells and whistles to implement it. So we purchased dry erase boards for teachers and magnetic sentence frames, and a lot of things that really display learning in the classroom. So teachers were excited to get those, colored pencils and markers, and all the things teachers love. We'll show you the laminated things we got them, because we know our teachers love things laminated, so so that's great. Next slide, please. So with the purchase of resources comes curriculum work, right? Because a resource takes us only so far. So we knew that we had to create and write curriculum based on those resources. We're fortunate that DESE has a great rubric resource for ESL curriculum, so we sort of looked at what the resource provided. We picked the best one aligned to that rubric, and then we knew we needed to supplement with our curriculum mapping. So over the summer, we had teachers who volunteered, we had our ML coaches who wanted to make sure that teachers walked in and had thorough curricular resources and curriculum to implement a scope and sequence. So we developed 16 curriculum maps in the summer and did the first 3 units for 16 maps. So K through then all of the middle school and all of the high school. And then as the year has gone on, we've, like winter break, I wrote, I spent time in my office. I could lock myself in and just, they were waxing the floor next to me, and I was like, don't worry, I'm not leaving this office for hours. It's okay. So we're continuing it, making sure that we have it through the end of the year. Our curriculum is aligned to the WIDA framework, which are the ESL standards across Massachusetts. We also created a lot of supplemental additions to the curriculum map. So we'll show you in a second some vocabulary and cognate charts. We have clear objectives and sentence frames, which objectives are a major focus for the school district this year. And of course, those alignment to standards to make sure our students are getting the rigor that should be in place for an ESL curriculum. I make sure that our teachers give us feedback. We have a survey that's ongoing. We give them opportunities to complete those surveys during our department meetings or half days. So that we're constantly getting feedback to improve those maps, because whenever you implement something the first year, you're taking your best swing, and then you're revising as it's being implemented. And then our maps are going to be, I'm presenting on them at the Office of Language Acquisitions June convening in Devon, so excited that we're going to be able to share those with ML directors across the Commonwealth. So next slide, please, are just some pictures of our curriculum maps. So what you see here are some of the additions we made. You'll see sort of on the top, we have the language from the WIDA standards there, like to inform is one of the major key language uses our kids need to be successful across the content areas. So you'll see some of those, what that looks like in language, such as describing characteristics of an animal or a habitat. And then what we included were sentence frames or sentence starters for our students to be able to use language to explain those concepts that they might not have yet. And we did it for students who are a little bit earlier in English and then a little bit later, so that kids who don't need as much support can have less language to support them. And then below, you'll see our vocabulary supplements that we created that we're really excited about. One is a language translation chart. So we took the key vocabulary of each unit. We used AI to do this, and then translated the vocabulary into our 3 major languages. And then we had our trained interpreters review those translations to ensure that they were accurate, right? We want to make sure that we had a review process for that. And then the other side are some vocabulary handouts that we created as supplemental resources. So it includes an image, a student-friendly definition and example, and then an opportunity for students to put like a memory clue in that handout as they're navigating through the curriculum. So really exciting work. We're really proud of it. And then the next slide is some of that in action. So as I'm walking through classrooms for implementation, I love to sort of see you can see the curriculum alive across the district. So we have essential questions posted. Those are the vocabulary cards that came with the unit. We printed them here in Woburn, actually, laminated them on cardstock, printed them in color. So they are posted in classrooms by unit with the essential questions. So kids see them, teachers refer to them, kids see them. And then you see some samples of student work where students are writing sentences and drawing pictures in their first grade unit. So it's very exciting. Really proud of the teachers, how they've taken hold of the curriculum implementation. Next slide, please. So that's the ESL side of the equation of my work, and the other side of the equation is the content areas in sheltered instruction. So that is classrooms that have English learners, have at least one English learner in their classroom, and they're providing supports and scaffolds for for students learning English. So most of the day, our English learners are in general education classrooms, and then for part of the day, they receive ESL services. So we want to make sure that students are supported across all of the spaces that they're in. So we have lots of supports for our educators across the district. We started a progress monitoring tool for language development, so we have more frequent checks on our students' language development over the years. So it's not just one static data point that we have with access testing. We still have the Elevation platform, which every teacher has access to, providing data for our English learners. There's also a strategy side to that platform, so teachers get self-paced professional learning. They also have about 100 activities that can be implemented that give students language-rich experiences, so they're good for all kids, but particularly useful for our MLs. And then we have a district SEI website with lots of resources that teachers can utilize as well. That was developed by our coaches. And then we have our coaches who are partnering with so many stakeholders across the district, supporting with how those language supports look in classrooms, lesson planning, co-teaching. They're engaging in data meetings, IST meetings, LAT meetings, so many acronyms. But they are really in a lot of spaces supporting that conversation about supports for our multilingual learners across the entire school day. And then the next slide is some work we've done in terms of expanding interpretation and translation supports across the district. We've used district funds, but mostly grant funds for this work. And we're really trying to build up systems and capacity. We haven't gotten really to the procedural, like what this looks like yet, but trying to get all the pieces in place to develop some of those procedures. We've sent a number of staff to DESI's Educator Interpreter course. So DESI has specific training to provide interpretation in education setting. There's Tier 2, and then Tier 3, which is a much more legal, more specific language. And Tier 2 is more academic settings, translating school-related issues that aren't legally based. So we've been able to train 14 Tier 2 interpreters across the district and 5 Tier 3 interpreters across the district. And the languages include Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, Russian, Haitian Creole. So we're trying to get as many people trained as possible so that we have that expanding opportunity to provide those interpreters and translators in settings across the district. We've also purchased a lot of hardware, I guess I'd call it. We have recently purchased AV units, which the easiest way to explain it are when you take like a listening tour somewhere and you put the earpiece in your ear and you can change the channel to listen to the tour that you're on. They're also used for interpretation spaces. So if we have an in-person meeting or event, they come in cases, so you bring the case to the site. We have transmitters, it's a very technical term, transmitters that the interpreter uses, and then you switch it to the channel. So like you'll switch it to Spanish or Portuguese, and then they can take the earpiece in the in the device and sit in the audience and get simultaneous translation during the meeting. So it really does provide a level of access. And it's good to have them so we can build those systems. And then finally, we've purchased Lexmark translation printers at every school. So these printers translate written text, right? Written documents, so flyers, transcripts. If they come in from countries and languages other than English, we can translate them to English with these printers. So they are available in every school. So schools have the opportunity to print multiple languages at one time using a document and use them for communication purposes across the district. So that's that. And then we have family engagement. We have some more fun pictures here, mostly of our FACE staff. We ordered and organized backpacks and supplies for homeless youth and newcomer youth. That was from another grant we received from DESE last year. So we purchased a lot of supplies that students would need as they entered school, and during the summer, when we were doing language testing, we were able to give backpacks out to students who came in for language testing in the summer, and then the FACE staff is also distributing them as the year goes on. So that was an exciting addition. We continue to run our adult ESL classes. We're in our second session of the year. We run a beginner course on Tuesday nights and an intermediate course on Thursday nights. We have Woburn staff teaching those courses. So teachers get to know our families in those spaces and are excited to do it. Our LPAC meetings, we've had one in December. We didn't have a large showing. We have another one coming in March. We're holding them virtually, as many ML directors are across the state, just because we are families are nervous about coming in public spaces sometimes, so we're just being cautious and, want people to feel safe and comfortable. So we're trying to get the word out with that. And then we just started in a leadership fellowship with two-way family engagement by DESE. So we just started that work. Equity Imperative, who we also partner with, is facilitating that work. I think there are 38 districts involved in the Commonwealth, so we applied and were accepted, and we just started that journey a few weeks ago. And then my final slide, which is some final celebrations. Our access data from last year looked wonderful. We increased our students making progress towards their English language targets from 39% to 48%. And you can see in the chart just the trajectory since 2021. So we've had our highest percentage since 2021, and we have surpassed the state average this year for the first time since that time. And then the last box is just DESE compliance. I presented here about our DESE compliance review a couple years ago. We had numerous findings that we needed to rectify. I'm thankful for the sort of all hands on deck and the support we got in implementing those changes. And we received an email in September that we were in full compliance with that report in September. So ring the bell. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Quickly, before we go to the members, the LPAC meetings are fully virtual,
Yes.
which can help
We're
with...
trying. We
Yeah.
tried to run it following one of our adult ESL classes, so trying to leverage space that already exists. There was another event the evening that we did run it, is what I heard, so it could have conflicted, but it's a work in progress.
Well, that will... If people are concerned about going somewhere, I guess that is definitely helpful. So, excellent. Do we have questions from the members? Ms. Nagel, please.
First, congratulations. This is amazing. And the equipment that you were mentioning, for folks that don't know, it is such expensive equipment. And so for anyone looking at 30 AV units thinking, why only 30 AV units? They come in big black boxes that seem like you are running around with millions of dollars on you, and you kind of are, because they're very expensive.
Yes.
So it's awesome to see us
just getting more and more of this equipment. I had a few questions. First, with regards to the Lexmark translation printers that you were mentioning. So do these printers work solely off of machine translation? They just like see the text and machine translate?
Yes. So on the printer itself, so it also uses AI technology, but on the printer itself, it'll kind of scan like word by, like line by line on the printer. If you send it from the Lexmark website, it then captures it as PDF. So the recommendation is to use the printer itself for more accurate translation. But DESE has give sort of the green light, the green light on the use of those printers to increase communications in additional languages.
And as part of like all of this framework that we've been building, have we been looking at, and I know this is very difficult, you mentioned transcripts, for example, we can't ask other places to use plain language, but is plain language something that is being built into the district so that we can best leverage machine translation, given that the more complex the language is in English, the less likelihood that it's going to be accurate in any other language?
Right, like I think about things like acronyms, right? I think part of the procedures, I've talked to a number of districts, and you're never going to be able to verify every document, but, as part of those procedures, in my head, I think, how do we have stopping points throughout the year, like a few stopping points to evaluate a few documents that we're translating so we can notice some trends, right? Like this is always interpreted this way, which is misleading, right? So what other word can we use, or what other phrase, or do we need to spell out the acronyms, which we should always do? So that's the hope, to kind of try to pick those up, and over time we get better with some of that plain language use for translation.
And also the transcreation piece, right? As we try to use things that are perhaps more fun, right? I'm thinking about the superintendent Woostat, for example, right? Like something like Woostat, that's not going to translate. Exactly, and it's things like this that are not going to work. And even thinking back also during COVID, so many districts, like we were pooling students to test, right? That was machine translated into swimming pool. So you can imagine how in Spanish there were so many families who were like, why are you talking to me about my child going to a swimming pool in the middle of COVID? So just, definitely plain language helps with that. Have you considered joining groups like the Municipal Language Access Network, that are like these national groups that can help with building greater capacity?
I have not, but I will make a note of that.
Amazing. I can send you all of the content.
Yes. And I'm not sure, because I'm not engaged in the interpreter course that DESE offers, but I also know that they give our interpreters in those courses numerous frameworks to like cross-reference language and like the best way to communicate, a certain educational term to get the message across that is intended.
Yeah. And on the LPAC meetings, how can we support with recruitment?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, we're trying to navigate different ways to do it. LPAC meetings, I mean, I think even from their inception, we're still working to get it off the ground. And, trying to get this to the space of more passive to more active kind of PAC approach. Right now, I just think people are a little scared and nervous, across the state. So it just is really just, we're working to just build trust as much as we can. If we can't get them at the LPAC, we know that our FACE staff is reaching out to our staff. We know that our educators are reaching out to our staff. So we try to leverage those, but, I think we just keep trying to build those relationships, and, hopefully we'll get people.
Thank you.
I wish I had a better answer for that one.
Thank you, Ms. Nagel. Ms. Wetzel?
Hi, first of all, thank you for all the work that you've done. It's obviously been a tremendous amount, working all winter break despite the floors being done outside your room. And I love seeing all the pictures and the enhancements you've done to the curriculum. It's really cool, clearly thriving inside of our buildings. And the immersion, too, of our students, most of them staying in classroom to receive services, I think is so beneficial for them, as well as the kids inside the classroom to really see how that works. And it's kind of similar, I think, of accessibility, right? Accessibility does benefit certain groups, but it benefits everybody. So does, I think, language immersion. So I'm happy that we're doing that. And looking at these pictures, I'm like, this is such a cool way to learn something. So I'm proud that we're doing that. I did have a couple questions. One of them actually goes back to the translation printer. I'm wondering who's trained to use that. For instance, like if PTO, they send a lot of flyers home. If there's someone on the PTO that knows how to, or if they have a contact in each building.
Yeah, so the steps we took was first we gave all of our building leaders access to it, and then we asked them to send us lists of people who would like access. So it's a simple setup for me on my end to enter in their name and email address. A couple schools have added the PTO to that list, so I just create a user account for them. We work with, when we go, me and the ML coaches, when we're in buildings, we make sure that we show people how to use the translation printer. It's pretty straightforward. So once they do it once, they feel comfortable just showing someone else how to do it.
Awesome. And then a flyer that went home by the PTO, then the teacher would know that the student needed it in a different language? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so a lot of times either the teacher knows, or they might do, they might post them all on, if they post them online, or, but usually they'll send it to a kid who they, they'll either connect with the kid or they'll make them available in the various languages.
Got it. Kind of similar, like to Verb of Mind.
Yeah.
If that translates. Okay. And then actually, on LPAC, I also had a question on how we could support you. And I'm wondering, like with the CPAC, Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, we have a member of their board that attends our Student Services subcommittee. I know that you're still kind of working to build up, but I'm wondering if it's something we might be able to look at once you do, or ways to help. We can think of a subcommittee that LPAC might fit into and have somebody come to our subcommittees, even if it's virtual, to report out on what you're doing, and that would also probably help get the word out as well.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's important for families to have a place to go, especially in these times, and I'm appreciative that you're doing it virtually, because I know it's not easy. And my other thought, too, was some of our elementary schools have the multicultural nights, so that could also be like a good way in for LPAC, too. But I appreciate everything you're doing, and we're always here to support you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliveira.
I'm going to echo what both Jesse and Maria said about supporting LPAC. However, we can get that attendance to be beefed up. The one question I did have is, how often are there opportunities for cross-curricular kind of examination of just what kids are doing in one, say, class to another, so that there's carryover if they're talking about a specific idea in math, that it carries into science, and using some of these references for our ML students, so it makes it that they get to use these words and phrases more often, so that it increases their grasp of the language.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak on at least the ESL side of the curriculum. We structure, we follow the ESL curriculum as it's provided, but the goal of the ESL curriculum is to leverage language that kids are using. So they may not use, for example, if we talk about a life cycle, right? Like maybe in ESL they're doing that with, I can't even think of an example.
Butterfly.
A what? A butterfly. Perfect. But in science class, they may be doing it with something else. But what kids are learning is ESL is like sequential language, right? How do you describe a cycle so that then those things like those sentence frames, they're just swapping out the academic vocabulary they're learning in that class. But the language to describe the cycle, they own because they're getting it in ESL. They're getting it in history, right, if they're sequencing. They're getting it in science if they're sequencing it. So it's not necessarily the same content, but they're building, the more we use those consistent language structures, the more repetition the kids get with them, and then they're swapping the content that they're learning in science, math, social studies, etc.
I was going to add two things also. The ML coaches meet not only with staff, but they also do weekly, bi-weekly meetings with every member of the curriculum department by content area, which has been very kind of purposeful in terms of ensuring that, like, and I know especially like when we rolled out the new math program at the elementary level, Tori, the ML coach at the elementary, has worked on creating resources specific to connecting vocabulary within the two kind of different areas. And the other part is that we did a lot at both middle schools, especially on with Morpheme Magic around Morphemes of the Week and making sure we're teaching by word part, one word, and it's taught across all content areas for the week. So if it's struct, for example, then struct is taught across in every single content area and where it comes up in different ones. I think it's always a space that can get better, but there has been a lot of work in terms of especially the collaboration between the coaches and the curriculum department's leads in terms of creating those cross connections.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Crowley, Vice Chair.
So Rania, I'm just going to let you do a little victory lap on the full compliance with the tiered focus monitoring.
Ring the bell a lot of times.
I just want to, we haven't had your position for very long. You were a new position that we had to advocate for to really control and monitor and supervise this department. So now the fact that we are seeing the results of that being full compliance, it's just really a very good step for the district and for the city to know that the EL learners in our district are learning the rigor that they're supposed to according to the curriculum guidelines by the Department of Ed. So anyways, could you elaborate a little bit on the tiered focus monitoring? If you want to relive it, if you don't, that's okay, you can pass. It's a safe space.
And I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that Raya's first day, I handed her the findings.
Yeah.
Just talk a little bit about what that means for the district and, why it's so meaningful.
Yeah, so every 6 years, every district goes through tiered focus monitoring. We do it for special education, civil rights, English learners. So the English Learner Review and TFM report had numerous findings across the board, but a lot of it, the biggest chunk of it was around access, right? Our students' access to grade level content, our students' access to, supports and strategies in the classroom. So we did a lot of work with the curriculum coordinators and the principals and everybody sort of, even though there might have been some discomfort, people implemented the changes and with the access results actually, I was walking through schools when they first came out and I remember being at the Malcolm White and there was a teacher, a gen ed teacher with an EL teacher and they were like, glowing about their results because they exited a lot of students at the Malcolm White. Their numbers were great. And they were like, I get it. Like, kids are like in the spaces now. Like, they're hearing the language. They're not being pulled out as much. Like, they're hearing it and you see it, right? So it was great to kind of see that. Like, that was the immediate connection. I didn't have to make that connection. They immediately made that connection, which was exciting. But, tiered focus monitoring is about compliance, right? And compliance is the floor, right? It's not the ceiling. So once you get to compliance, then you can start building on those things, right? The ESL curriculum, like where that takes us. So it builds from there. So excited to have the foundation.
I remember that when you came before us once, because there's always this sort of mentality of you talk about special ed and EL, special ed and EL, and so you only have one model of looking at learners that have different ways, experiences of learning. And you said to us, you were like, ML students are not disabled. Mm-hmm. They do not have disabilities. You do not pull them out and segregate and all of the things that we are used to this model of special education. So it really struck me that the way that you're running the department, and I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, Brianna, obviously, great presentation, great what you're doing for our students and our families. I know the Mayor Concannon's over there. Another resource you might want to reach out to is Samantha in his office for community engagement and things like that. I know you're doing a lot already, but there's another avenue to kind of explore with him as well and get the community more involved, not just the students and their families, really get out there in the community and express what we're trying to do here. But I appreciate all you're doing in that department. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Chisholm?
The numbers that you gave us were 24, 25, did we go down?
So actually, that's a good note. Thank you for mentioning that. So in that chart, those are our current numbers. The parentheses indicate last year's, because I figured that would be a question.
Yeah.
So I noted last year's numbers. So our
Okay.
EL numbers were 709 last year, and they're 630 this year.
Okay.
And then our FEL numbers are actually higher. So, and those numbers, fluctuate depending on kids that have been here. So we're overall down about 50 students overall. I will note that although we're down from last year, we are consistent with the year prior.
Right.
So we were at about 430 before I got here. And then we worked on some systems on identification, and we got to 630. And then we went up, right, to the 709-ish. And now we're back down to 630.
Okay.
So it seems right now the typical trend line seems to be around 630.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Crowley, do you have anything to add?
Just easy question for you, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Can you speak a little bit about the seal of biliteracy at the high school? Not here, but it's not on the presentation, but certainly part of your work.
Yeah. So the seal of biliteracy is part of the Look Act that was passed in Massachusetts in 2017. So it's been implemented here for a number of years, and we've increased the access that our multilingual learners have had to the seal of biliteracy. It used to be students who were enrolled in your higher level world language classes, but then we received some grant funding. I write a lot of grants to actually administer it to all high school English learners, and it really, allowed them to showcase their native language literacy skills in that assessment, and a lot of them earned the seal. And then, in addition to the high school seal of biliteracy, we started, we also got licenses for the earlier grades to do it, because we know in U.S. schools, if kids come here at a young age, I was one of them, where the more English you learn, you feel like you want to almost sometimes disconnect from your native language, and you might lose the bilingualism. So we want to try to reinforce bilingualism and multilingualism from early on, because if you wait till high school to there's a lot of attrition that happens with language. So we try to encourage multilingualism in those assessments, and kids can showcase what they have in literacy in their L1, because sometimes we wonder, is it language development? Is it something more developmental? And we can showcase that a lot of our kids, especially our middle school and high school kids, have extensive literacy and oracy in their L1, and it just the transfer needs to happen to English, but they're coming with that knowledge and that background. It just needs to be transferred to English. So it gives more information, because English isn't the only point of information that we can give now with those assessments. So we've increased our seal of biliteracy numbers, but we've increased it for our multilingual learners as well, because it is an equity-based initiative, and sometimes it can lose that piece. But we've really worked hard to make sure that our multilingual learners have that access to the seal. So it's been great to see the increase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ryan.
Next, buffer zone policy, the BZP, first reading. I'm going to look to Vice Chair Crowley for this one.
Ms. Young, do you want me to introduce it, or would you like me to?
Whatever is easier for you.
I'll start, and then you can jump in. Does that make sense?
Through the chair. Yeah, literally go. I put you in the saddle up on snow.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I asked for this to be put on the regular agenda just to bring more attention to it. This is the first reading of the JC attendance areas, which is otherwise known as the buffer zone policy. Basically, what the committee is undertaking is to grant the direction and authority of the superintendent and his staff to create buffer zones within the city that allows for more flexible attendance policies in the event that we are going through a space capacity issue in one particular school. So there'll be areas of Woburn in which students, if we face space capacity issues at one elementary school, then the superintendent will have the direction to work very carefully through a protocol to reassign new learners to a different school. And so basically, if you look at the map that's in your packet, R2, G10, H3, H2, H5, H4 would become buffer zones. So if the Reeves, for instance, faces a capacity issue and the administration is faced with opening up a 4th classroom, for instance, or maybe even a 5th classroom, then we would simply ask those learners that are just newly enrolling into the district to move to the Harold-Wyman school. And so when we start to look at kindergarten enrollment and start to look at how classrooms are assigned and what our space capacity issues are, the administration would have this authority to kind of work with families to redistrict them to new buildings. So this is a big cultural shift for the city of Woburn. This is to alleviate the space capacity issues that are still lingering in our district without moving hundreds and hundreds of learners around that have been situated and acclimated to a particular school building. This will allow the district to only move new learners to a new school without having this experience of being acclimated to a building. So it would be mostly focused on kindergarten students and also new enrolling students. So, and only if we are facing, quote, a defined material enrollment problem, which would of course be the very uncomfortable situation of having a school that is overcrowded. Ms. Young will probably talk about how this saved the district from having 3 classrooms at the Alta Vista and 1 classroom at the Linscott that would only have 14 children, in a serious equity issue with regards to that. And so because we had used A4 as a buffer zone, we were really created a more equitable situation between the 2 North Woburn schools. And Ms. Young can go into that. Hopefully I got that right. So anyway, so this is first reading. This is the words that the Resource and Capital Planning Committee recommended to the committee. We did strike portions of the policy that we felt were too micromanaging, such as directing the administration to create wait lists, preferences, things of that nature. We believe the administration will, in fact, look at parent preferences and all of these things, but we don't feel like it's part of our job to create these protocols. There is a new person starting in central office who is in charge of enrollment. Again, Ms. Young, correct me if I'm wrong. And that person will be in charge of creating protocols to adhere to the school committee policies. So all that being said, Resources recommends that the committee see this as a pilot for now. Allow administration to start this policy, collect data on its successes, its strengths and weaknesses, reconvene on this in the winter and see where we are and how it worked and what needs to be tweaked and whether or not we need to impose such things as wait lists and protocols that maybe we want to bring up to our level. So, that being said, Resources really wants it to remain a broad policy and to really give administration the ability to do its job and really report back to us its successes. This is a map of what the buffer zones are. And so this is really, Resources looked at this briefly. I know that Ms. Young met with the Redistricting Advisory Committee to get their feedback on this particular map, but Resources voted 3-0 to bring this to the full committee for its first reading. Resources is not recommending any action being taken except for this to be publicized as much as possible, to go through the 3-meeting policy palooza with a final on our first meeting in March, which is going to be timely for kindergarten palooza, which kindergarten orientation night, which then the administration will have the full authority backing of the school committee to really announce this policy in completion. So, and I don't know if assistant superintendent, you had any more on this?
No, I think just some things to echo. One of the things that we talked a lot about is policy versus procedure and protocol, and that there are components that we discussed that would definitely be like procedural and protocol decisions that I think are important to do as part of the yearly review. One being the process for preference, school preference for those enrolling in buffer zones, the other being the maintenance of wait lists, all things that we would like to do in process and protocol. But I think there's a lot about what do we kind of want to put in stone versus what do we want to have some flexibility about through implementation, especially as we're doing it in our first time through. Just some things to note that what we talked about was the annual review. To reiterate again, part of recognizing that we are doing a yearly review of the maps, the components, the decisions that are being made. We're really doing this kind of every single year. We went through the first kind of round of that process, looking at the policy, buffer zones, kind of the use of enrollment will be also part of that same yearly review. So we will continue to look at it and see how it works. And again, to reiterate, this is not necessarily new process, as we did use it last fall between the Alta Vista and the Linscott. And again, to Ms. Crowley's point, it was able to make it so that we could provide better equity of class size between two buildings. And that really would be the ultimate goal. I think just some key pieces within the policy as a whole is that while there are buffer zones, which are core spaces for new enrollment, primarily we're talking about kindergarten, we are still using criteria for those decisions, such as students being surrounded by neighborhood peers. And so one of the examples I've said is that a singular student in H2 that's all the way over by 95 is not going to be enrolled like to the Malcolm White, right? That like there's still going to be within the component, we're not just going to like randomly start assigning, that like there's still decisions made in that buffer zone related to. And so one of the things we talked about is that it's more likely that we would be making the decision to use the buffer zone similar to the A4, which is like an entire neighborhood, or would be using kind of a bigger chunk. And so I just think that as we're communicating buffer zones and we're talking about them, I think kind of explaining that differential, that it is not something where we're just going to singularly have someone isolated and assigned. This would be a decision within the buffer zone for like a community of learners to be going together. And then again, the assignment of buffer zones decisions would be grandfathering them in for the duration of. And then again, this is like my least favorite part of this, but my reminder that we're doing this as a yearly process. And so the outcome of next year's yearly review of maps may result in, right now we're talking buffer zones, but like we still can be talking about component movement over time. And again, I say it just because I think it's important to recognize that it's really still kind of an iterative process. And in terms of the policy too, just to note the change that was made and recommended out of resource that came was our commitment as a district that this would be a heavily yearly communicated policy. And I can talk briefly about the discussion that we had at our advisory council yesterday, but one of the conversations was around after this evening and now after the first read that we would start to do what we consider like a comprehensive communication plan in the ways that we would be communicating it widely and really understanding what buffer zones are. And then the last thing is just to note what the kind of main purpose for going to the advisory council again was to review the selection of the zones that we would be using as buffer zones for next year. The map you have in front of you now is the map from Sanborn that was provided at the end of our decision for utilizing buffer zones. And these were selected, one, because they are components that move from our current phase 3 to end 6 map. And they are ones that are kind of viable for use, meaning, for example, some of the components that move at the end map are G11, 12, 13 over on the south end. Those go to the Reeves. Those are not viable buffer zone components, one, because The Reeves is not a community that a school that we would be moving until we're moving, obviously, out ECP. It's also not a component. That component needs to move as a group because we're drastically changing like the flow. And so it would be very difficult to have that component split between the Reeves and the Goodyear, just like further creating disparity of space. And so again, we really looked at it as components that were, if we were to be moving students as a group from it, that it would make sense and stay connected in this kind of phased process. And so the conversation was around really primarily the components between the Harold Wyman and the Malcolm White, and whether we wanted to kind of have all of those zones, so the H3, 4, 5, and 2, whether we wanted to just use H3 and H4, or if we wanted to use just H3, and whether we wanted to, and one of the ideas that was brought was whether if we kept all of them, but we were able to share kind of early in the enrollment process. These are all of them. However, we are not going to be considering H2 as a buffer zone for utilization for next year, whether the communication part. But ultimately, the discussion was really around there were pros and cons to both, primarily pros being that it provides more flexibility for the district to have more options, that it provides kind of more of that kind of overall foreshadow for families moving in, that they kind of an inevitable movement. It also, because families are able to provide preference for enrollment, there could be a community of students who, because they know that they are going to eventually go to the other school, have the opportunity to kind of self-filter and help do some balance. And so the more components that we have there opens up more possibilities if wanted. The negatives really being that it just puts more people in limbo and can create, of course, some uncertainty. And then the last part that I just want to make note of in terms of a conversation that we had yesterday was just a reminder around communication, specifically related to popsicles on the playground, ensuring that we've given school assignments, that we're being conscientious of when we're posting things in our schools, working with our buffer zone buildings in order to maintain space for before and after school care, which our principal spoke about, and proactive and clear communication. And so with that, just as my last note on the policy is just around timeline and what we had written in for timeline. And again, I said this during this, the subcommittee. I said it during communication with the advisory council yesterday, that because so much of our enrollment happens towards the end of the summer, it is very difficult for us to commit really much earlier before the start of the school year around the assignment piece. My hope is that with centralized enrollment that we will get closer to that. But again, what I'm trying to be is just as transparent and honest as possible, which is I don't want to give a date of August 1st and then have students get unenrolled and told now they're in a different building. I think that there's kind of neither way path on this feels great. And so the decision of the group was written as September 1st. I think that that's really the biggest question, is what kind of that piece of this wants to look like, and really what the committee wants to confirm. One of the things that I spoke about, and I said that I would share on behalf of the WTA, was concerns around this for educators and the closeness of timeline, whether we wanted to have an internal timeline, that we made an effort by a certain date of August 15th, but that the policy was still written as September 1st, was something that we discussed. Again, I'm open to options and ideas. And again, as I said in conversations with Christy, is that, we just want to be honest with the time, but I also recognize that it's not ideal. I think that's it.
Thank you.
And so, just to clarify, the JC attendance areas is going to be replaced by this, because we have one now,
Yes.
old, including the paragraph about buffer zone. That's all going to fall under JC.
So this policy was built off of a policy from another community that has the same buffer zones, and they have it as both in one. Then what they also referenced in their policy was the JCA policy.
Which ours is not.
And which ours is not
Right.
changing, but because they referenced JCA in theirs, I wanted to provide what JCA would remain as well.
Which we just voted on to reaffirm, so that's
Yes.
in good shape.
I'm not touching it.
No,
but
no,
I
no.
wanted to make sure everyone saw it because it is referenced as part of JCA. So this would be what my understanding, this is what another neighboring community that has this policy does, is has them in one. However, again, I defer to the committee. I will, however you want it to look, I'm fine with.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
The only thing I wanted to add is just JCA is about assignment to schools, giving the superintendent the right to, for an exceptional reason, assign a student to a building based on hardship or other things that we don't need to talk about here, but it's certainly student to student. So that's what JCA does.
Not vicinity necessarily.
Right. So putting them together, this is buffer zone, this gives the district the authority to create buffer zones, and then JCA is still saying, but if there's a hardship, then you should contact central office, kind of thing.
Yes.
So going forward, this will be out there on the table, then it will be discussed next meeting, and then we will take it up at the chair's direction at the first meeting in March. That will be the date where it will become policy. So we still have, a couple meetings to really work through language if the committee has language concerns. Well, excuse me, Madam Chair, would you consider putting this on the agenda again in case there's questions that come up?
Yes,
Just
so
because-
February 25th, we will have it as a discussion item.
Yes.
And then March 10th, we will take action.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just to echo a little bit what was already said, Ms. Crowley alluded to this being a pilot. So in other words, we need to adopt the policy, knowing, as Ms. Young alluded to, that we will review it next year. So to think that we're going to come out of the gate and have a perfect policy in year one, maybe we will, but maybe we won't, right? And so I think it's important to understand that we're going to do our best with this. And similarly, what you have in front of you is a draft, is the way that I think about a working document. And so if there are words that you feel are missing, things that need to be said or not said, please let us know so that we can, when we do adopt it, is reflective of all of your input. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Nope. So we will table this policy for now. And next on the agenda would be the 26-27 school calendar. Dr. Crowley.
Sure.
Take it.
So this is part two of the Woburn Public Schools 26-27 school calendar. Some edits have been made, specifically Election Day is November 3rd, it's the Tuesday, and it's a not a presidential election, but we typically have Election Day off, so that's a consistent practice here. In Woburn, there were some minor edits to the number of days listed in the calendars as well. All of our students need to attend 180 days of school, and that is reflected in this calendar. I said this at the last meeting, a couple of the changes, significant to some extent. The first day for teachers is before Labor Day this year, so Wednesday, September 2nd and 3rd, and that's a contractual change, but again, trying to get this to the families as soon as we possibly can, given the change. And so with that, open to any questions that people have regarding the calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have
Second.
a motion and a second. Any discussion on the matter? Ms. Wetzel.
Yes, I appreciate all the work on the calendar and the many comments that we got from people to include the WTA, and I appreciate the work they've done with the information sessions with the community and trying to better understand how we can all work together and help each other. And I hear you with the half days, WTA and the community. I am too, I'm a parent, so it is tricky. So I know this is a negotiation year and looking forward to hearing and seeing more about maybe ways that we can make this better for the community as well. And my only other piece on this is, and I brought it up last meeting, was the Good Friday, March 26th. I understand having that as a day off due to contracts totally makes sense, but I'm wondering if we, instead of calling it Good Friday, we can just call it a day off, since we don't name any of the other holidays to include, like, Christmas, we just call it a winter break, just to be more inclusive of the different backgrounds that our students come from. I don't know if that needs to be a motion, or what the committee thinks about that, or if we can make a change of
So
that
I
nature.
think I would think that the committee will vote on the days on or off, and then any change like that could come at another time, too. I don't think we would have to vote on the language of that. So I think that's something we could look into, or could be looked into by administration after today's vote.
Perfect.
With the, yes.
Thanks. Great.
We could see what other communities do.
Yeah.
I'm sure there must be
I
somewhere.
think that would be nice.
Any other on the motion? Yes, Ms. Nagel?
Just to support what Ms. Wetzel is saying, to look at this as we enter negotiations, not as it relates to this, just to sort of put a pin on really being inclusive as we observe high holidays that are reflective of our community.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? I just had just to clarify, so kindergarten previously, when we started on a Thursday, was Thursday, Friday, and so those 2 days of sort of acclimation will take place on September 8th and 9th, the Tuesday and Wednesday this coming year? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, makes sense. And then a lot of questions came up about the half-days and the cadence of Wednesdays or Fridays. Do we have any comments on that, or just sort of that's how they fell? I know there was communication between, it wasn't a unilateral decision in that the joint labor, came together and worked this out, I guess. And there's, of course, room for edits going forward. But if there was any other comments on that, sort of how it falls into place, I don't know if there was...
So in terms of the Wednesdays, those had been selected previously because of preschool. And so because preschool is not in session that day, if we were to be using the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, given that half-day preschool programming, that it would have a larger impact, and that given that Wednesday is not a preschool in session day, that was my understanding.
Yeah. No, very good. And though it's not color-coded on here because it's not for sure yet, the last day of school is an early dismissal. We just didn't add it to that because we don't know for sure what day that's going to be yet.
We don't know.
Yes.
We don't know the last day of school this year.
We don't. But we do know at the top it does say dismissal times on the last day of school, et cetera. So there is mention of that. Great. And so do we have a motion and a second? And any other discussion? I see none. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. On to subcommittee reports, finance and personnel.
All right, so I didn't know if we're going to make a motion to suspend, but we're going to go through.
I think we can do it quickly.
Okay, all right. Yep, we did meet on 2/4 at 3:30 here at the conference room. In attendance was Superintendent Matt Crowley, Director of Finance Alex Dizio, Assistant Director Patty McKinnon, and school committee members Jessie Wetzel, Maria, and myself. The warrants that need to be paid, dated 1/12. Warrant 1 is for $1,888,799.57. Warrant 2 was for $58,462.24. Warrant 3 is for $184,466.95, and warrant 4 is for $1,103,755.76. And we need a motion to get those bills paid.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the matter? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes.
The questions were submitted prior to us meeting, and they were accepted, and the vote was taken to recommend that we bring this to the full committee. The budget cycle and dates for upcoming meetings, we talked about that in detail as far as when we could do this. The 2 middle schools may be combining some of the lines, so for the new members, it wouldn't be something different, but for us, it might be something for curriculum-based things and supplies. Adding the 2 middle schools together is something that they're contemplating doing.
I thought you meant buildings.
Yeah, I know.
It was like,
There you go.
hey, one step at a time.
The building substitute, which has always been something I'd love to have in there. We're hoping that we can do that. But the substitute line is currently already over by $200,000, so it might be tough to have that be a wish and a dream. But we have a scheduled budget meeting for March 2nd, I believe, and March 10th is the projected date that the budget will be coming to all members. The hope is to get a budget number so sooner than later so that we can start the search for our new hires. We have behind towns that pass their budgets in early April, so it affects the quality and quantity of the application pool. Superintendent on personnel, Superintendent Crowley notified us that there are 21 retirees this year across the entire district. We have principals, teachers, paras, maintenance staff, et cetera, that will be retiring. The advertisement for Principal Nelson, who is retiring from the Kennedy Middle School, is in process.
Yes.
And Jim Cormier, you'll probably have to appoint somebody for that committee to go on to that one.
Noted.
And then there will be a search for the principal and assistant principal here at the Joyce Middle School, since both positions were interim last year. So, and then Sue Teethold is retiring, but her replacement has been hired, and will be introduced to the committee at some point, and her start date should be mid-May, hopefully.
Projecting.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we'll also be looking to hire a new assistant principal for the Malcolm White, since Beth jumped over to the Alta Vesta, for assistant principal there. So I don't know if that's going to be another search committee or how that's going to be worked, but you can figure out with...
That's virtually done as well.
Okay, great, awesome. And there'll be an ask for an assistant principal in the budget for the Shamrock Elementary School. Principal Wayne Clark will be retiring next year, so hoping to get someone in a leadership role that will get acclimated to that school, because we have the RISE program, the regular ed kids there at special ed, so it's a building that has a lot going on.
Pre-K.
So add an assistant principal, so that will be an ask in the budget. And we, Superintendent Crowley updated the committee on a desire to recruit more diverse staff. He is a member of the Mass Partnership of Diversity and attends meetings. We have an internal group of staff who attend seminars and conferences for diversity training and recruitment. And this is just not a challenge for us here in Woburn, it's a challenge for many cities and towns. There's obstacles for people to get here, such as transportation, and salaries are different here than they are in Boston. And then the University of Lowell has reached out to Superintendent Crowley to begin discussing offering classes or programs to try to elevate students' interest in going into education. But that's just in the beginning discussion age. And we adjourned at 4:30.
Excellent. Any questions for the Finance and Personnel Subcommittee? Seeing none, moving on to Community Relations Subcommittee.
Have not met, Madam Chair.
Curriculum and data trends.
We haven't met since January 22nd.
Policy.
First time doing this, so bear with me. Okay, so we met on February 3rd at 4 p.m. in this conference room. In attendance were Superintendent Matt Crowley, Ms. Chisholm, Ms. Crowley, and myself. We started with public comment from Ms. Rachel Kuberry, who wanted for us to, who brought back up the BDFA policy, which is the policy on school councils, and the BDFAE, which is the policy on school improvement plans, requesting that we discuss these in an upcoming agenda. We also received a report from the Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee through Ms. Wetzel on student wellness needs, including consideration of a district-wide dog therapy program. We accepted the report from the SSA and are looking to define the legal parameters around this policy and how we will direct the administration on allowing animals on our grounds. Ms. Wetzel provided some verbiage and policies from other communities, and as well as a series of questions for us to consider. And SSA had voted unanimously for the policy to be brought up to policy subcommittee, and so we will be reviewing this in upcoming meetings. Then we moved on to some policy updates from MASC, starting with IKF, the graduation requirement. MASC had proposed having two separate policies here, one that is IKFE, which is competency determination, and IKF, which is graduation requirement. We looked at both of them, and we are just adding, making an addition, thanks to Superintendent Crowley, on the graduation requirement piece, which we received. And so we will be putting this for first reading at our upcoming meeting. Then we had...
Is that this meeting?
No, a policy.
You all.
Yes,
Okay,
upcoming
perfect.
policy meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that.
Noted.
I'm going to just go through a series of policies for which we took the same action. So we had ADDA, which is Corey requirements, ADDA E1, information concerning the process in correcting a criminal record, ADDA E2, Corey requirements again, ADDA E3, Corey requirements form, and ADDA R, which is Corey requirements. These are all being tabled until Tony Wyman in Human Resources can review, and then will be up for discussion at our upcoming policy subcommittee meeting. Then we discussed BEC, which is executive sessions. There were minor edits. We are tabling this one until we can get a legal opinion from Tom Delmar and Colby Brent. We discussed BEDD, which is rules of order. We are looking to adopt it. There's no changes. It's just making sure that it is adopted and has a date. And there was a motion from myself to move to last reading at our upcoming subcommittee policy meeting. We discussed BEDF, voting method. And we're hoping to adopt the MASC language there, and there was a motion to move to first reading as well. BEDC, which is school committee quorum, we discussed removing it, and are hoping to just have it removed. My understanding is that's something that we can vote on today, because
we could table it here.
Table it here. Fantastic. Thank you. And then BEDG, which is minutes, minor edits, and this is going to move to first reading at the upcoming policy subcommittee meeting. And BEE, special procedures for conducting hearings. Again, minor edits. And this we had to approve to final action before the whole school committee, so we table it here too.
You're all set with it at policy?
Yes, it literally was just removing chairman.
Noted.
Since,
Thank you.
as we can all see, we can sometimes have just chairs.
Sometimes we do.
They don't have to be men. So that's literally all we were removing from that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Yes.
To consider BEE.
Yes.
Special procedures for conducting hearings, which is only changing chairman to chair.
I have a motion to suspend the rules. In a second, any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules?
Do I know?
Not yet.
No.
Someone just say second.
I did.
Jesse did.
Jesse did.
Okay.
Any discussion on that? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion, any against? That motion passes. And now that the rules are suspended,
Now I'll make a motion to approve the language change as proposed by policy in policy BEE, special procedures for conducting hearings, which contains just a minor edit of the word chairman to chair.
all right, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We will subtract those three letters.
Thank you.
We will return to the regular order of business here.
And then the only other matter discussed was considering for future policy subcommittee meetings, developing an opt-out for parents, families, members, guardians to decide if they want their children to opt out of certain topics within curriculum.
On top of what we already have for certain other topics. Got it.
And meeting adjourned at 5 p.m.
All right. Any questions for policy?
Please don't ask me questions. I don't want to have to read all
Seeing
those
none, thank you, Ms.
letters
Nagel.
again.
Okay. And you will be meeting again when, do you know?
Not yet.
No problem. Resources and capital planning?
I already went over my minutes,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, but I'll just go through the logistics here. So we met on February 3rd at 5:30 PM. I was present, Ms. Wetzel, Mr. Oliveira, Courtney Young was present, and Dr. Crowley was present. As I indicated, we went through the buffer zone policy, but also I wanted to bring something else up that we had voted for to direct the superintendent to file an SOI at the MSBA, Statement of Interest at the Mass School Building Authority. We actually have to do 2 SOIs. This was it's going to be just a formality for us. The city council has the right language for the vote, but we only did 1 vote for 2 SOIs. We need to do 1 vote for each SOI. In other words, we have to direct the superintendent to write 2 SOIs. So at some future meeting, probably once the council is done with it, we should probably take it up again and just redo it. And that was topic 1, and then the topic 2 was buffer zone, and then we adjourned at 6:40 PM.
So the council did approve in committee to push forward the vote, which I think will be favorable on February 17th, and so at February 25th at our meeting, we can put this back on to read in the entirety the vote for both SOIs and check that box. Any questions for resources and capital planning?
For the purposes of, I'm going to channel my inner Andrew Lipset. For the purposes of viewers watching us at home, could you explain why we need to do 2 SOIs? Is it because we have 2 buildings that are...
Oh, sure. Through the chair to Ms. Nagel. So basically what you have to do in an SOI is lay out the deficiencies in each building. So you have to, tell MSBA that this building has these particular deficiencies and this building has this particular deficiencies. So if you try to do 1 SOI for both buildings, they could have very different kind of priorities, statutory priorities that we'd be looking for. So we want to have both buildings be considered at the same time, but in the explanation therein, we will certainly be saying that we're going to look to consolidate the 2 in order to cure the deficiencies that exist in the both buildings.
And that is not the step we're at. So.
Through the chair, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Resources and Capital Planning Subcommittee? Seeing none. Ms. Wetzel, Student Services and Achievement.
Yes, we met on 1/28 at 6:08 PM. There was a few-minute delay due to snow, moving of cars. In attendance were myself, Mr. Mulrennan, Mr. Oliveira, and Dr. Ryan. First topic was special education update from Dr. Ryan. Psychology openings, we have 2 current location at the middle school and then 1 at the high school. And we're already staffing for our ESY, our extended school year program, and that's in good progress. We had an update on the RISE program, so we do anticipate high enrollment in our incoming kindergarten students, and there's ongoing discussions, as there is every year, on where those classrooms will be and any adjustments that we might need to make. Again, this is something that we do every year. Something that is in its very infancy stages, and it's a pilot discussion, so this isn't anything confirmed, but the early childhood program, the ECP, there's a potential of a pilot model, including a new peer-based programming. Basically, the ECP is a 4-day-a-week program for our peers that is a half-day. This would allow us to do a 5-day program with a full day. A full day would be like 8:30 to 1. And also a 5-day program that would still remain half-day morning session at both, and the Reeves would host the 5-day full-day program, and the Shamrock would be the half-day. Again, it's not anything confirmed, but it is something that we're in discussions about. And this, obviously, there'd be a price increase for those peers that would be attending those full-day sessions. So if you were 5 full days, you would pay $6,300. If you were 5 half-days, you'd pay $4,300, keeping in mind our current rates right now for our half-day program is $3,300. And the goal for this to help increase peer integration and into our schools. And something else to note, social emotional learning, we are extending that into our preschool as well, which is very exciting. Quick budget update. We are currently on track with our budget. Several students still remain on out-of-district placement wait list. This is not abnormal. Those schools fill up very quickly. We just continue to monitor that. And we just also watch the out-of-district tuition fees as those go up every year, and they're trending upwards this year. We are professional development. We have a February professional development coming up focused on wellness. And our FY27, we are already planning that. Let's see, I'm trying to summarize this because I know it's snowing. Our objective is to finalize this and have it ready for our March meeting. And Dr. Ryan continues to meet with Charlie Doherty at City Hall, and those conversations are going well. And some things to keep in mind, our sped offset is approximately $5.8 million, our out-of-district tuitions exceed $10 million, and our circuit breaker funding remains very strong, which is great. Budget lines that continue to increase is our out-of-district tuition and transportation and busing, and then parent transportation reimbursements due to increased federal mileage rates, those have go up as well. And then next, we had a Special Education Parent Advisory Council update from Ms. Tisdale, so CPAC. CPAC recently, as we know, hosted a speaker, Ms. Sarah Ward. There were approximately 65 families, CPAC along with administration, excuse me. There were approximately 65 families in attendance, which was great, and those were both Woburn families and families from surrounding towns, so it was a really nice opportunity to connect with other families, not just in Woburn, and a great way to get Woburn on the map as well. And we had a lot of positive feedback from them, so that's great. And the next CPAC meeting to note is February 24th at 6:30 p.m. It will be virtual, and the president of CPAC, Adam Chapman, will be running that, and it's about dads, kids, and the IEP process. And if you have information, you want to know more, you can go to CPAC's website. They also have a Facebook page. And lastly, as already brought up in policy, we talked about the therapy dog. We talked briefly about Lily, the therapy dog at the Goodyear, who visit once a week on Friday. She goes to the game program, and then she rotates through a grade level, and it's based on a reward system, what grade receives Lily for that Friday. We referred the policy down to subcommittee per recommendation to better define types of animals, allergies, handling expectations, funding, approval of where the dog can go, animal, amongst a variety of other things that we thought would be pertinent prior to talking about having a therapy dog in our school. And a motion was made by Mr. Mulrennan, seconded by Mr. Oliveira to send that to policy. And if you look in my notes, you will see a link to the information that we sent to policy. And also in my notes, there's a link to Dr. Ryan's email that she sent us with updates on special education. And we adjourned at 6:45 p.m., and our next meeting will be February 26th at 6 p.m. here in this room.
Thank you, Ms. Wetzel. Any questions for the Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee? Seeing none. I just wanted to remind the members that I did request that we draft a policy for each of the subcommittees, so if anybody has any updates on that, gentle reminder, we can send that over to policy.
As per the below.
Correspondence. As you gather your correspondence, I will read mine. So I have Rachel Kuberry contacted us regarding the calendar, Shanna Keene, also calendar, Sherilyn Peabody, calendar, Kim Lucy, calendar, Rachel Kuberry, city website postings, Robin Borowski, school lunch options, Rachel Kuberry, school committee protocols, Rachel Kuberry, agenda postings, Ray Japot, calendar / Good Friday, and Brian Grace on an Eagle Scout project. Does anyone else have any correspondence for us today? Seeing none. Future agenda item. Oh, Jessica,
Sorry,
please.
real quick, and I sent this to you right before this meeting, Ms. Cormier, or Chair Cormier. It was from Ms. Kuberry in regards to busing, and it has some maps and other information.
Okay.
So I sent it like at 6:40.
Noted, and I will share with the rest of the committee.
And then also to the committee, and I don't want to read through all these, and honestly, most of it was already talked about, but I sent a note. I did office hours last week, and I gave the committee a recap of major discussion points that the community brought forward, and we've heard basically all of those today, either in public comment or through reports of the subcommittees. But if anyone has questions on those, I'm happy to read those or answer anything. If not, it'll be fine.
Thank you, Ms. Wessel. Anyone else for correspondence? Nope. Future agenda items, I have the updated SOI vote. Any other new agenda items I can add to the running list? See, none. I will take a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares, which she has.
I'll make that motion. Roll call.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Ms. Nichol?
Yes.
Mr. Olivera?
Yes.
Ms. Wetzel?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes, assuming there was no discussion on the motion, and that motion passes. Thank you, everyone in the audience. We will now move into executive session.